February 6, 1840. Maori chiefs gathered at Waitangi to sign what they were told was a sacred agreement, a partnership, a guarantee of their mana, their authority, their land. Within months, that authority was gone. New Zealand, the country you know today, was built on this document, the Treaty of Waitangi. It's been called the founding document of a nation. But there's a lot about this document that's untold, or rather hidden. There were two versions of the treaty, and they did not say the same thing. The British promised Maori chiefs they would keep their power, their sovereignty, their control. But the English version, it said Britain owned everything. So if the treaty promised Maori control, how did Britain legally take it all? The answer lies in a single word, a word that was never explained. A word that changed everything. You see, before 1840, New Zealand was not a British colony. It wasn't anyone's colony. It was Maori land, governed by iwi tribes, each with their own chiefs, their own systems of law, their own mana, authority passed down through generations. There was no king, no central government, no single ruler who could hand over the entire country. And that's important, because you can't surrender sovereignty if there's no one sovereign to begin with. Maori weren't isolated either. By the 1830s, they were trading with Europeans, timber, flax, food. They had diplomatic relationships. Some chiefs even traveled to England. They understood negotiation. They understood agreements. But Britain had a problem. French ships were circling. American whalers were operating unchecked. Lawless British settlers were causing chaos, and the Crown had no legal authority to stop them. Britain wanted control, but they didn't have control. And under international law at the time, you couldn't just claim land that belonged to someone else. Britain needed consent, but consent could be manufactured. So they designed something brilliant, something that looked like partnership, a treaty, a guarantee, a promise of protection and respect. But underneath, it functioned as surrender. And the Maori who signed it had no idea. February 4th, 1840, 2 days before the signing, a missionary named Henry Williams is handed the English version of the treaty. His job? Translated into Maori, he has one night. One night to translate a document that will determine the fate of an entire people. This wasn't careful diplomacy. This was a rush job, and in that rush, something critical was lost, or maybe it was never meant to be found. In the English version, Maori chiefs were asked to cede sovereignty, total, absolute control, to the British Crown. But Williams had a problem. There was no word for sovereignty in Te Reo Maori. So he chose a different word, kawanatanga. It comes from kawana, governor. It meant something like governance, administration, day-to-day management, not ownership, not supreme authority, definitely not sovereignty. And here's where it gets worse. The Maori version also included another word, one the English version barely mentioned. Rangatiratanga, chieftainship. Full authority, the right to lead, to govern, to control your land and people. The treaty guaranteed Maori chiefs would keep their rangatiratanga, their mana, their power. So to Maori leaders this made sense. Britain gets kawanatanga. They can manage the settlers, keep the peace, handle the foreigners. But we keep rangatiratanga. We keep control of our land, our people, our authority, shared power, not surrender. That's what they believed they were signing. Chief, in Te Reo Maori, will our mana remain? We'll come back to that. Because here's the truth. The English version said Maori gave up everything. The Maori version said they kept everything that mattered. Only one would be enforced, and it wasn't the one they signed. February 6, 1840. hundreds of Maori gather at Waitangi, chiefs from across the north, warriors, elders, observers. This isn't a quiet signing ceremony, this is debate. Some chiefs are suspicious immediately. They've dealt with Europeans before. They know how promises can bend. Others are curious. What exactly does this treaty say? And here's the problem. Most of them are hearing it read aloud in Maori for the first time. Williams reads the Maori version. He emphasizes the guarantees. Your rangatiratanga will be protected. Your lands, your forests, your fisheries, untouched. Britain just wants Kawanatanga. Just governance over the settlers. It sounds reasonable, but not everyone buys it. Some chiefs walk away, refuse outright. Others argue for hours. Then, slowly, some return, because promises were being made outside the written text. Verbal assurances, handshakes, guarantees whispered in conversation. Your authority will remain. This is just to control the settlers. Nothing will change for you. Promises that never touch the paper. By the end of the day, over 40 chiefs have signed. Not the English version, the Maori version. The version that said they kept their power. The version that said Britain was just managing things. But in London, the English version was the one that mattered. And that version said one thing. Maori had ceded absolute sovereignty to the British Crown. Within weeks, Britain began acting like they owned everything. Governor William Hobson declared British sovereignty over the entire country, north and south. Not just governance, ownership. And the chiefs who had signed, they had no idea, because the document they signed wasn't the one being enforced. May 21st, 1840, just over 3 months after Waitangi. Governor William Hobson stands in the Bay of Islands and makes a declaration. All of New Zealand is now under British sovereignty. Not governance, not shared authority, sovereignty. Total, absolute, unchallenged. North Island, South Island. Every iwi, every tribe. Whether they signed the treaty or not, Britain now claimed to own it all. And they didn't ask permission. Within months, a full colonial government is established. Governors, magistrates, courts, laws, all British. All operating as if Maori authority never existed. The chiefs who signed at Waitangi, they're watching this happen in real time. And they're furious. Because this is not what they agreed to. We were promised rangatiratanga. We were told our mana would be protected. We were told Britain only wanted to manage the settlers. So, why are they making laws for our land? Protests begin immediately. Letters are sent, meetings are demanded. Chiefs confront British officials directly. You lied to us. This is not the treaty we signed. But the British response? You ceded sovereignty. It's in the treaty right here. And the chiefs stare at words they can't read, words they never agreed to. So now, Maori leaders are forced to ask themselves a question. Did the Crown misunderstand what we agreed to? Or did they lie? Visual. Freeze on a chief's face mid-argument. Cut away before resolution. We'll return to that. Because here's what became painfully clear. The treaty meant partnership to Maori. It meant possession to Britain. And only one of those meanings had an army behind it. By the 1860s, the betrayal was complete. Millions of acres of Maori land confiscated. Not stolen in the dead of night, taken legally, using the treaty. The same document that promised to protect Maori land was now being used to justify taking it. Here's how it worked. The Crown said, you ceded sovereignty. That means we make the laws. We decide what happens to the land. And if Maori resisted, if they said, this land is ours, you have no right. It was called rebellion. Rebellion against the Crown. not defense of what was promised, not enforcement of their version of the treaty, rebellion, and rebellion could be punished. The New Zealand Settlements Act, 1863. It allowed the Crown to seize land from any iwi deemed in rebellion, over 3 million acres, gone. The treaty that promised protection now justified punishment. And when Maori tried to challenge this, when they went to court and said, "The treaty we signed doesn't say this," they were told their version didn't matter. Because the courts, they were British courts, interpreting a British document. Under British law, Maori weren't allowed to interpret their own agreement. The version they signed, the one in their language, reflecting their understanding. It was treated as a translation error, a miscommunication, not legally binding. The law refused to hear Maori meaning, and without their meaning, they lost everything. But here's the thing, the Crown knew. They knew the two versions contradicted each other. They knew Maori didn't understand they were ceding sovereignty, and they documented it. The natives do not comprehend the term sovereignty. They knew. It is doubtful the chiefs would have signed had they understood the English meaning. They knew, and they did it anyway. For over a century, these documents sat in archives. Letters, reports, private correspondence between colonial officials, and inside them, proof that the Crown knew exactly what they'd done, just months after the treaty was signed. 1840, just months after the treaty was signed. A British official writes, "The natives do not comprehend the term sovereignty. They believe they have ceded governance only, not their lands or authority." He knew. Another official, same year. It is doubtful the chiefs would have signed had they understood the full meaning of the English text. They knew. A missionary, someone who was there at Waitangi, writes, "The Maori version does not convey cession of sovereignty as understood in English law." 1860s. A colonial land official admits the word kawanatanga was inadequate. Sovereignty was not truly seated in the minds of the chiefs. These aren't fringe opinions. These are officials, translators, people inside the system, all saying the same thing. The treaty was ambiguous. The Maori version didn't match the English, and Maori signed believing something completely different than what Britain enforced. So the question becomes, if they knew this, why did they keep the lie going? Because acknowledging the truth would unravel everything. Think about it. If the treaty didn't actually grant Britain sovereignty, if Maori never truly consented to British rule, then every law passed since 1840, every land sale, every court decision, every act of government was built on sand. The legitimacy of the entire colonial state depended on the treaty being valid, and the treaty could only be valid if Maori had ceded sovereignty. So the Crown made a choice. Ignore the contradiction, suppress the Maori meaning, enforce the English version, and hope no one looked too closely. But Maori did look closely. As early as the 1860s, Maori leaders began mounting legal challenges, taking the Crown to court, demanding the treaty be honored, their version of the treaty. They argued breach of contract. They argued deception. They argued that rangatiratanga was guaranteed and had been violated. We'll come back to what happened next. Because here's the reality. Privately, the Crown admitted the treaty was flawed. Publicly, they acted like it was absolute. And the reason was simple. Acknowledging the truth would mean admitting the state itself had no right to exist. So they buried it. For over 130 years, the Treaty of Waitangi was treated like a relic. Not a living agreement, not a binding contract, a historical curiosity. It wasn't taught in schools, it wasn't debated in Parliament, it wasn't enforceable in court. In 1877, a judge ruled the Treaty of Waitangi is a simple nullity, a nullity, legally meaningless. So the Crown got what it wanted, all the authority the treaty supposedly granted them, and none of the obligations it imposed. And for Maori, decades of dispossession, land taken, language suppressed, authority erased, all while the document that was supposed to protect them collected dust. But by the 1970s, silence was no longer an option. Maori protest movements were growing. Land marches, occupations, public outcry. The injustices were undeniable. And the government realized ignoring the treaty wasn't working anymore. So, in 1975, they created the Waitangi Tribunal, a body specifically designed to hear Maori grievances, to investigate breaches of the treaty, to recommend justice. Justice was offered. Maori could finally bring their claims forward. They could present evidence, tell their stories, demand accountability, and the tribunal would listen. But here's the catch: the tribunal had no power to enforce anything. It could investigate, it could recommend, it could publish reports, but it couldn't force the government to do anything. It couldn't return land, it couldn't overturn laws, it couldn't undo 130 years of colonization. And, here's the critical part, when the tribunal was created, it could only hear claims from 1975 forward. Everything that happened before 1975, all the land confiscations, all the breaches, all the lies, off limits. It wasn't until 1985, 10 years later, that the tribunal was allowed to investigate historical claims. But even then, the tribunal operated within boundaries set by the Crown. The same Crown accused of breaking the treaty got to decide how far justice could go. And when settlements were reached, fractions of what was taken, apologies without full restitution, symbolic gestures, justice, within limits that protected the state. So, the treaty was no longer ignored, it was acknowledged, studied, debated. But was it ever truly honored? Because honoring it, really honoring it, would mean admitting the state was founded on a lie and dismantling everything built on that foundation. So instead, the treaty became a symbol. Celebrated in public, controlled in practice. Today, New Zealand calls itself a progressive nation, bicultural, treaty-based, founded on partnership. The Treaty of Waitangi is everywhere. It's in the Constitution, in government policy, in national identity. But the contradiction? It was never resolved. The two versions still say opposite things. And New Zealand still operates as if both are true. The state derives its authority from the treaty. It needs the treaty to be legitimate, because without it, Britain had no legal right to govern New Zealand in the first place. So the Crown must claim the treaty granted them sovereignty. But Maori, many Maori, still say, "We never ceded sovereignty. We kept rangatiratanga. That was the agreement." So, who's right? Legally, the Crown says the English version prevails. Morally, Maori say the version they signed and understood must count. And nearly 185 years later, this question still has no answer. Yes, there have been settlements, apologies, compensation, land returned, some of it. But these are settlements within the system that exists because Britain claimed sovereignty. The fundamental question was never put on the table. Did Britain ever have the right to be here at all? Because answering that question would destabilize everything. Courts, parliament, land titles, citizenship, all of it rests on the assumption that sovereignty was lawfully transferred in 1840. But was it? If the Maori version is honored, then Maori never gave up their authority, and the state has been operating without full consent for nearly 2 centuries. If the English version is enforced, then the treaty was a deception, and every promise made to Maori was a lie. Either way, the foundation cracks, and so the debate continues. Tino Rangatiratanga, co-governance, treaty principles. What does the treaty actually mean? Who gets to decide? And here's the question New Zealand and the world still can't answer. If a nation is built on a treaty that meant two opposite things, who decides which meaning counts? And the Treaty of Waitangi was not unique. Across the world, empire was built on translated lies. Different languages, different promises, same outcome. This is just one story, but the pattern, it's everywhere.